What's up? Welcome to the Union Fitness Podcast. I'm Jared, the better looking host. This is Curtis.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
So, Kurt, what are we going to talk about today?
For the intro music.
What are we going to talk about today?
So today, we have some video breakdown. So if you are, if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple, make sure that you go and check us out on YouTube at Union Fitness. Because you're going to be able to see the footage, be able to see us break down these videos, so you know exactly what we're talking about. But we're going to start off with this first video. Is my
Hold on,
buddy?
we need to toast real quick.
Oh yeah. We got Chris in the
Yeah.
podcast.
Woo!
Now we're ready.
Yep, we're good.
That one stabbed me a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I got a crystal in the finger.
Whew.
All right.
All right,
Good
man.
old ammonia cap, guys.
Mhm.
Now we're ready. All right. So starting it off.
Woo.
First video. One of my buddies from back home. I met Jacob probably 3 or 4 years ago through a mutual friend, and he got into powerlifting. And he kind of came to me and was asking me questions and advice and things like that. So off and on, I've been working with him for the last couple of years. Not necessarily coaching him per se. He does a pretty good job. He comes up with some ideas. He'll send them over to me. We'll look over them, and he'll go from there. So he's 18. He has a 500-pound squat right around. He's got a 500-pound deadlift, and I think he's got right around a 300-pound bench press. So for an 18-year-old, he's pretty strong.
Heck yeah. That's awesome.
Now, Jacob he got a screening done, a movement screening from one of our friends back home.
Hold up. You guys are never fucking doing that in the studio again. I am lit up over here, and I'm about 10 feet away from you. No, keep that shit away from me. I'm dying. My eyes are watering. Holy shit.
They're still good. We're going to save them for halfway through if you start falling asleep.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, Greg is a very good physical therapist back home. He's helped me a lot. He's done some dry needling and stuff like that on me, and he's the real deal. So Greg was working with Jacob, and Greg did this squat, bodyweight squat movement screening on Jacob, and it kind of showed some underlying issues that he's had going on. Now, I will say, and Jared and I talked about this, these are things that aren't necessarily seen that easily under load, right?
Yeah.
You said if Jacob would have done this holding a 25-pound plate, you may have not seen it quite as much.
Yeah, it might
right?
have fixed itself a little more.
Yeah. So this is body weight. It's from the front, the side, and the rear, I believe. So we'll go ahead and we'll play it. And
Okay.
Jared breaking it.
Yeah, so you can see it going here.
Now, is that have you seen what we're seeing?
Yeah. Yeah, you see some pretty crazy things based on
Now, from the side, you don't see a whole lot, right?
No.
I mean,
I'll definitely see it here.
So what is that dip at the very end? It's like even his head goes down to the right.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
it can be generally with like a weak shift screen. You can notice like he actually like dips down deeper into the right side too, which means like you could definitely see it upside.
Now, I did forget to mention that I guess it was like a year, maybe year and a half ago, he had some issues with his lower back. It was just like locked up. Like I remember it was hard for him to get out of bed sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be have something to do with it.
And that's the thing too, that it's rarely ever like an isolated incident. You
Right.
know, people always want like there's the one thing I gotta fix, and usually it's like you fix one thing and there's probably like 2 or 3 more things you should also be working on at the same time. So I mean, obviously I didn't look at this kid, but
Right.
like ankle mobility is a huge issue.
Okay.
Would be like your hip mobility, internal or external rotation. Even like a motor control issue. So we talked about like loading is squat, right? A lot of times when you hand someone a weight and let them like give them a little bit of load, what happens is the muscles like fire better, like they turn on a little better. and it might correct itself a little bit. And so that just means, like, in his warm-up, you would have to, like, figure out what's not firing appropriately for him to do an appropriate body weight squat. In his warm-up, you address that, and then you should see a carryover and a fix into, like, when he actually, like, does his body weight squat and then a loaded squat.
So, yeah, what we're gonna do, like, I'm gonna ask you kind of what you would prescribe him a little bit, but first, one question. He actually had a really good question for me, and I was like, look, man, don't beat yourself up. There are a lot of people that experience this, and I think there are a majority of people that experience something along these lines than they even realize.
Yeah.
Now, what could potentially be the cause of that? Is this something that maybe they've been experiencing throughout their whole lifetime, and they don't really realize it until something like this? Or is it something that shows its face after competitive lifting for a while?
It could be, I mean, yes.
Okay,
So, like,
yeah.
a lot of times when you have, like, something that significant, like that shift, for example, it could be due to, like, an injury history he has, depending on, like, even, like, what kind of sports or things he did, like, if there were certain biases towards one side of the body. Like, if you ever look at, like, pitchers' shoulders, for example, like, their throwing arm is, like, really weird compared to their non-throwing arm, right? Like, the scapula is usually, like, depressed and, like, all over the place, and they have crazy external rotation, almost no internal rotation for some of them. So based on, like, what his history with sports or activities or whatever is, and also, like, if he ever got injured, that could play into it, because you do, like, start to, your body has an amazing way of compensating to still do what you want.
Sure.
And you, until you have somebody actually look at you or you start to have pain, you never really think about it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Now, so, like, we know that as humans, we are not perfectly symmetrical, right? Like, everybody has maybe a small imbalance one side of the body. Would that be true?
I mean, everybody's,
Yeah. So, could that be something like just over the period of courses of events, and especially if you're lifting, it's not going to be something that's going to show its face early on, but would you say, like, the more you progress, the stronger you get, the more it can be exposed? Or no?
I'm gonna have to say kind of no.
Okay.
And my reason is, like, if he would have, say for example, he has, like, a true leg length discrepancy where one leg, like, the bone on one side is actually longer than the bone on the other. He would have lived with that his whole life. Like, his body would have compensated in some way, and, like, he probably won't have pain. He'll probably move, like, pretty evenly. Have you ever heard of Lamar Gant?
Yeah.
The powerlifter.
Yeah.
With
He had the meanest scoliosis ever.
Yeah,
right?
and he deadlifted, like, 660 pounds or something. Like,
he was I want to say he was like 132 or 148 pounds maybe.
Yeah, and he could squat, like, a wicked amount.
Check out that one on the right. Yeah.
Yeah, like, he was super strong, and he was born with a scoliosis, and he just decided to strengthen his back, and, like, he was good, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's an actual, like, true, like, deformity that he had, and yet he could still lift pretty evenly. Like, if you watch him squat and stuff, it doesn't look anything crazy,
right.
So usually with something that you would see with Jacob is from, like, a potential injury or, like, a motor control deficit or mobility issues or all the above.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we gotta.
I love watching Lamar Gant lift. It's cool.
Yeah, so he was very, like, a very much unconventional style lifter. Like, look at his setup. Like, most people would watch a video of him lifting right now and be like, "Oh my God, that's terrible. That's terrible form." Blah blah blah. But the dude was working with what he had.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The reality. He's not too terrible.
So I don't know if that's actually, if that's a actual X-ray of what his spine looked like. But if they show a video from behind, you can. He was so dense with muscle.
Yeah, if you just look
body.
up images of the guy, here's a good video. But if you just look up images of the guy, like, there's pictures of him, like, flexing and stuff. You can see.
Yeah, you can see it in his shoulders.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He was good.
yeah, definitely. Now, so if Jacob walked in to your clinic with the issues of what he has right now,
Mm-hmm.
what would be your first steps with him?
So as far as like screening him out goes, as I said, we want to look at ankle mobility.
Mm-hmm.
We want to look at his hip mobility. If those don't clear out, then that's what you want to address, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with ankle mobility, it can be like a tissue like length deficit. So
Sure.
like if your calves are tight, right,
Mhm.
especially your soleus, or if you like, you're going into your squat, you feel like a pinching feeling in the front of your ankle. That's usually an ankle mobility deficit, and you want to do like a banded joint mobilization, for
Right,
example,
right.
to get that. With the hip, you want to make sure you have good internal external rotation. If your ability is limited going into internal and external, then like stretching, like hip airplanes are good, or hip 90-90 stretching is good to kind of help get that hip internal external rotation and like learn to control it through your range of motion. If like all that clears out, then we're going to check and see like comparatively side to side, like what does his strength look like isolated for hip abductors, external rotators, and then if there's like a difference there, you kind of address that. And yeah.
Now, one question, and this is something that I think a lot of lifters don't really understand or don't realize. Would you say that a majority of people who lift and power lift have overabundance of external rotation or internal rotation? Which one is usually weaker in lifters?
Oh, internal rotation, super weak in lifters. Everybody like push your knees out, push your knees out, push
Right.
your knees out. And a lot of times you see hip problems because people don't have any strength or range of motion into internal
Sure.
rotation. And when you're trying to dunk your squats, I mean, you need that stability in your hip.
So, yeah, exactly. So kind of like, why is hip internal rotation still important as a lifter when we are told that we need to externally rotate with everything? Whether it's if we're bench pressing, we're externally rotating in our hips. If we're deadlifting, we're externally rotating into the floor.
Mhm.
When we're squatting, we're externally rotating. So why would we need to internally rotate?
So just strengthening your internal rotators is going to build the stability of your hip. I think a common misconception is that when we are like externally rotating to perform a movement, right? Like so like your glute max is it's a very large muscle, and it's an external rotator of the hip, and that's a big part of where that comes from, right? We want our glutes to fire like real hard for all of our movements. But the other muscles don't turn off. Like if they turned off, your hip would not work correctly,
Right.
So like
Yeah.
they have to work to stabilize your hip. So if you don't work to strengthen those, you're not going to have stability in your hip as much. And also if you lose that range of motion, like as you go down into a squat, if you don't have good hip internal rotation range of motion, you can start to develop things like hip impingements. And so like making sure that you have very strong hip internal rotators is very, very important.
Yeah. Now, what are some things you could do to work on that? Because, I mean, a lot of people who would listen to this, wouldn't understand the importance of hip internal rotation, let alone how do they get it.
Yeah, so I mean, like you can Google like just even how to do like a banded hip internal rotation exercise. It's super easy. It's kind of like a geriatric exercise you do in the clinic, but it works.
Yeah,
Seriously, like it works. If nothing else, it'll kind of get them activated. Your hip internal rotators, aren't as big or strong as the external rotators for
Right.
the most part, but like at the same time, they're still very important. So like just getting them moving. The hip 90-90, like people know that as a stretch. My coach had me start doing, my coach Rob Polenic, Brutal Iron Gym, giving him a little shout out.
Yep.
He had me doing hip 90-90 lifts. When I was having like some hip pain, I had some internal rotation limitations on my hips, and I started doing lifts from that position. And oh man,
Yeah.
it's rough.
Yeah.
It's kind of like doing like a bridge, but you're in the 90-90 position. You just push up and back down.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you just touched on a little bit about, what your coach is having you do. With that being said, how is your training going into this meet? We had, John, one of our good friends, loyal member of Union Fitness, owner and operator of At War Athletics.
Check him out.
Check him out. He will be at the meet here in a little less than 3 weeks, selling shirts. So come by and see him. But he asked me, what is the difference in my training style and Jared's training style? Because we're doing separate meets, but 1 week apart. So I think it'll be interesting. Us kind of, and I've never really talked with Jared about the type of program that he's doing or anything like that. And Jared hasn't really, like, we see each other train, but we haven't gone into detail. So this is, this is something we've never really talked about. So, what is your style of training? Does your coach have like a certain philosophy when it comes to training? At this point, this close to the meet, are you pushing it really hard? Are you backing off a little bit? What?
Yeah, so I think normally we do a pretty good push going into the meet. Helps me build confidence going into the meet. Like, I like to be able to move heavy things before a meet because like I'm confident when I go in there. This meet prep's a little different. With I just got a lot going on, like work and planning a wedding.
There we go.
A lot of traveling. So my training hasn't been able to be like my consistent schedule.
Sure.
So my coach is very patient with me, which he always has to be because I'm probably not an easy person to train. I never go off program, I swear. But
and you decided to do this meet kind of last minute, right?
Yeah, it was super last minute.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't gonna do it, and then because of the wedding planning stuff, and then I realized that I probably wasn't gonna be able to do a meet for a pretty long time. So I'd like to just, I wanted to get one out of the way.
Yeah.
Get it in, do it. So yeah, signed up for it, but we were hitting it pretty hard, progressing really well, and then like lack of sleep, life stress, stuff like that caught up. Started to, like, my training started to drop off a little bit as far as like quality, and so we've backed down on like the weight and stuff and focused a lot more on like my recovery.
Good.
So yeah, so like for example, this was like this week, for example, we had some, like last week and this week, it's like light squats. We did like deadlifts were like kind of heavy, but nothing too crazy. This is my first time flat benching. I was dealing with some AC joint pain issues, and we did a lot of incline work, a lot of work for my like scapular strength. It finally like cleared itself up, so I finally started flat benching again, which is nice.
Right.
And I don't have any pain with that, which is good. So yeah, so for me, right now it's literally week to week based on what my schedule looks like.
Sometimes I've had some of the best meets like that. Like you can have the I don't want to say one of the worst things, but you see it a lot where somebody's like, all right, man, 20 weeks out, or 18 or 16 weeks out, and I'm going to do this, and it's going to be perfect. And everything's mapped out, which is good. You need to have a plan, right? But there's always roadblocks. There's always things that pop up. So you can't have your mindset on sticking to that exact plan, especially for that long a period of time. It's very easy to get burnt out.
Yeah.
Especially if if you're a regular person who, has a full-time job, maybe you have a family, maybe you do things on the weekends, like 16 to 20 weeks of a full-blown like training for a meet, trying to go all out for that whole time, that's disaster. That'll wear you down. So some of the best meets I've had were kind of like a short window meet, like 10 weeks, even 8 weeks. So I mean, there's something to be said for it, but there's a lot of unknowns in your mind.
Yeah. God bless my coach. I mean, he's literally helping me like week to week, almost workout to workout, just because of like my schedule has just been all over the place.
Yeah.
So
So with your main movements, your squat, your bench, your deadlift, are they kept at pretty high volume for most of the time? Like, are you doing 5 to 8 reps on your main movements, or are you keeping it like 5 and under?
Currently?
Yeah. Or even leading up to this point.
I think we didn't really go above 5 for anything. Squats we kept to like singles, doubles, triples, I think. Right now I'm pretty much doing doubles on everything. I'll hit some singles this week on squats. I did doubles today on deadlifts. Yeah, we really haven't gone above. I respond pretty well to reps, I think, so we did a lot more volume work on the deadlifts, but we still keep it to like no more than 5. It's just a lot more sets. Yeah.
Now, what about your work that follows the main movement? So your assistance work, your accessories, do you guys do a lot of that? Like, what percentage of your entire training session comes in the form of your main lift, and then what percentage is assistance and accessory work?
Oh man, I've never looked at it like a percent. It's probably like 50-50. I don't know.
Yeah.
I spend a decent amount of time on my main movement because I like to focus on like the quality of the movement. And then my accessories, I try to focus on them and like do what they're meant for, but I also like really like to push those hard.
Yeah.
I like to leave the gym like dragging myself out of there. I don't know, it's just how I like to do it.
Well, that comes naturally from like, why'd you start training in the first place? You know, like
Mhm.
that never goes away.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how far you get into being competitive. Like, you always want that same feeling.
Yeah.
That you got out of it when you first started.
Yeah.
So that's normal.
Yeah.
You just have to balance it a little better,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
But like a big focus for I think this meet prep for us has been like my quad strength
okay.
and or just strength and also kind of being able to like push into my knees a little more when I squat, kind of like because and you know this from watching me squat, when I squat I tend to just like shoot my butt backwards and do a stripper squat
Mhm.
a lot of times because I got a bubble butt and I got chicken legs, so very confident in my butt, not so confident in my chicken legs. But we did a lot of like narrow stance, like low on the leg press, high volume like leg presses. He'd have me do like a 16 rep max, and then we would just keep that same weight on there. And I had 5 sets. I got a minute rest in between, and it was you have to try to get as close to 16 as you can every set.
Right.
And it was horrible. I think
Just
I got like
work.
4 by my last,
Yeah.
my last set. But like it translated into my squat a ton.
Mhm.
Like over a 4-week block, my squat improved tremendously. I think mostly from that.
Good.
And it helped build the confidence in my deadlift too.
Mhm.
I think it really helped me build tension like into the bar, like pushing down through the floor and everything.
Sure.
So, yeah,
Okay.
that was a big focus on this prep.
Cool.
What
Cool.
about you? How you prepping into your meet? Cause you're not too far out either.
Right around 3 weeks. So what's different about this meet prep that I haven't been able to experience over the last year or two because of injuries is just being able to push things a little bit.
Mhm.
A little bit more than normal, because the small kind of nagging injuries and issues I've had over the last 1 or 2 years have prevented me from really really training hard.
Yeah.
And my workouts were always structured around what was I able to do at that time. So what could I do to still be able to train and still be able to accomplish the things that I needed to while trying to avoid whatever injury I had.
Yeah.
So like, I've never really front squatted in my entire life. I mean, I messed around with it when I was younger, but my last meet prep, it was one of the only things I could do that didn't bother my hip.
Mhm.
So I had to learn how to front squat, and I had to learn how to push my front squat. Now it helped, but ideally, that's not really what I want to do when I'm 6 weeks out from a meet.
Yeah.
I want to be a little more specific. So this is the first time in a few years that I've really been able to just put my head down and say, okay, this is what I got to do. This is my goal each week,
Mhm.
and I'm going to push it, and I'm going to try to accomplish it. And this meet prep, I have weights in my hands and on my back right now that I've never had at this point of a meet prep.
That's cool.
And it's really cool, right?
That's cool.
But you're in your mind, you're still in the unknown. You're like, man, is the same thing going to happen to me as it has over the last couple of years? Like, when I get under this bar, is something going to pop? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't think like that, but you do think like that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
natural for everybody. So that's where I am right now, and it's fun. But I still understand that there's a bigger picture than training. Like, the meet is the big picture.
Mhm.
Training is just you're getting the tools together to be able to compete. So I would say, over this meet prep, I've been training in blocks. All right. So like, and it's progressive overload within a block. So I might do 4 weeks to 6 weeks working on a weakness that I have. So, if, for example, my upper back in my squats and even my deadlifts, that's usually when the weight gets heavy. That's one of the first things that kind of starts to give a little bit.
I hear that.
I mean, a majority of people, right?
Yeah.
So, when the weight gets heavy in a squat, when you're coming up out of the bottom, if your upper back is not quite up to par, it's going to try to fold you a little bit, right? That weight is going to try to do what it wants to you. So, in the off season, or, at the very beginning of meet prep, one of the main things that I focus on is heavy safety bar squats. and that safety bar is high up on your traps, and the way that the bar is cambered, it kind of
Wants
pulls
to
you
pull
forward,
forward.
right?
It's terrible.
Terrible, right? So that was, that's 4 to 6 weeks of working on a weakness. Then based off of that, you say, okay, we took care of that a little bit. What's next on the list? And a lot of times, for me, a big thing is producing speed at the beginning of the lift and carrying it through the entirety of the lift. And that's a lot of people too.
You're
and
a
that's
very
where
explosive lifter too.
I think it's always something that I heard when I got into lifting. Move weight fast, whether it's light, whether it's heavy, whatever. And it just kind of stuck. So, one of my favorite tools that I like to use are chains. And I think they might not be for everybody, but I think everybody can benefit from them, if that makes sense. So with chains, you want to work on producing more force throughout the range of motion. So for me, in a deadlift, very explosive off the floor, right around the knees tends to get a little hard. So that's where right where those chains start to kick in. So again, speed work, I do a block of speed work with chains. You can either progress in the chain weight each week, or you can progress in the bar weight and leave the chain weight the same.
Now, when would you progress like bar weight versus chain weight? Like if you're training a client, for example, or with yourself, whichever one you want to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
When do you do each?
So I think that the less experienced lifter doesn't need a lot of accommodating resistance in the form of bands or chains. I think you can keep that very minimal, because I think if it's a new stimulus that they've never experienced, you only need a little bit of it to get the desired effect. So if I have somebody that's a 400-pound deadlifter, and they want to put, say 25, 50 pounds on their deadlift, we'll first address the technique, starting position, execution, tightness, stuff like that. And then once they have that down, most of the time they need to start building velocity, building speed.
Yeah.
So then I'll add, say, 2 chains.
2 chains.
Shout out to my boy. So we'll add 2 chains to the bar, starting off with, say, 55% of their max in bar weight, and then kind of progress in bar weight each week. Not necessarily throwing on a bunch of chains, because those chains, they can get heavy real quick.
Yeah.
And they hit hard when they start hitting. Now, a more experienced lifter will start with a little bit higher percentage bar weight, maybe 60%, and then throw on like 2 more chains each week. Now, that's not set in stone anywhere. That's just kind of my philosophy.
Yeah.
So
Clearly it works.
So, going into this meet, I did, up until six weeks out from the meet, I did speed work from the floor. I have my best deadlift is 770, and I didn't use over 500 pounds. But we were adding chains, right? So I'm working on producing speed, being explosive, working on good positioning, and then letting that chain weight kick in.
And how much chain weight did you end up using?
I think around 160 pounds.
Like at your top
Yeah.
sets for whatever that block was?
Right. So
Right.
the heaviest session of that block would have been right around 500 pounds plus 160 pounds of chain. So I'm moving 660 pounds for a couple reps. So I can, because I've been doing it for a while, I can base my progression and where I am and where I need to be based off of how that moved. And that just comes with experience.
Yeah. Now, do you play the song, Do You Chain Hang Low, as you...
On the way to the gym.
Gotcha. Okay, just making sure.
Gets my mind right. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the moral of the story, it's all kind of block training based off of what my weaknesses are and what my needs are. So, but we're going to go back to Jared's training. We have some video footage. Now, is this squatting?
this
I
is-
haven't seen these yet.
Yeah, so, your first time seeing them.
Yeah.
So this is my squats from Monday. I had to do them right after work. I didn't eat for like 8 or 9 hours before I went in, so
Oh boy.
it was a little rough. And I'm still wearing my polo from work. But
I'm gonna need a drink for this one.
I had Josh Conroy there help me out, which is good.
He's so reliable.
So we have video from the side here.
All right. Now, what kind of what percentage of your max right now are we working with?
I don't know actually. I don't know what the percent would be.
Okay.
So this is 385 My best in a meet I think has been 440, and in the gym I hit 465 not that long ago. So
Okay. So we're gonna, we'll watch this and then I'll kind of give my input a little bit. I've seen Jared lift multiple times, but I've never really sat down and watched a video of him lifting. So what I'm saying is Jared's starting position is great. He's in a good position as he's going down. He drives his hips back. If I were to critique him, when he hits the bottom of the squat, it's almost like that textbook picture that you see of a squat. So right there, like if you look in textbooks,
thanks, man.
That's pretty close. I would say a little bit more forward knee travel, but that's pretty close. Now, if I were to, work with Jared, I think one of the main things he could benefit from are developing his hips. And I would actually have Jared do, a block or even a couple months of box squats. And the reason we would do that is we really want Jared, he said earlier he's got a big old butt. So we want him to be able to use it. So right now you see it kind of shooting back. And I think his quads are pretty strong. They might be stronger than he thinks. And I think they are initiating that squat. So you can see his legs trying to go into extension from the very beginning. And when we think of our hips, we want to think of it as this is an analogy that my good friend Casey always used on me when I was learning how to squat, is a door wedge. If we put a door wedge underneath the door pushes up a little bit. So if we think about our hips as a door wedge and our upper body as the door, if we shove that wedge in, meaning if we shove our hips in and get them stronger, they're going to propel our sternum up and our chest up out of the hole. So if we can turn Jared's hips into a wedge, we can get him to come up in the same position that he's going down. So I would do that. I would probably do a couple months of box squats, and on those box squats I would have him probably in a little bit wider stance. Actually, you have a pretty wide stance.
So this is really narrow for me. I used to squat really wide. It actually started to bug my hips a little bit.
Okay.
But I used to squat really wide because felt good to just pretty much do a hip extension to do my squat.
Yeah.
And so I brought it in, and I felt a lot more pop off the bottom.
Okay.
Which is why I like it a little more.
Yeah. So I think, with those box squats, we're working on sitting back, loading up the hips, and then we're initiating the squat by driving our sternum up as the first movement. So we want to kind of simultaneously drive the sternum up as we're driving through the floor. And box squats are a great way to teach that.
And I think that the side video was like my last set for that day. I don't remember. I think it was.
Yeah. But he keeps his back nice and tight and loaded. You can tell by his elbow position, and you can tell he has a nice broad chest and a nice high sternum on the way down. So just a couple things to work on over time. We'll see the front one. That's a good starting position.
Curtis view here.
Yeah, everything. Your knees are tracking good. They're externally rotated a good amount for what you're doing. I think maybe one thing.
So that's narrow for me, just so you know.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe your hand position on the bar. If you adjust that, because it looks like your wrists are nice and straight, which is what you want. You don't want your wrist cocked back. You see that a lot of times.
I used to be like that.
I think we all were at one point. With our wrist cocked back, we're not able to get our back and our lats engaged. We can get our hands in a nice tight position relative to our shoulders, and we can get that bar in a little bit lower position, which is more advantageous, but it's not necessarily going to engage the meat of our back, our lats. So with your wrist nice and straight, it's good, but I think in that position, your hand position on the bar, I think it's not allowing you to get those elbows in and externally rotate the shoulder and by your side. It looks like they're back just a little bit, but overall, it's a really, really good base to start with. I think just building a couple things.
Yeah, so if I put my hands wider, I don't have enough meat back there. I have to pretty much high bar squat. So,
well, let's high bar.
I did have to high bar for about a year because of my hip injury that we had talked about previously.
Right.
Yeah, I had to high bar and front squat only for a year, and actually turned into just front squats for almost a year, and then I could switch into high bar. Did a meet high bar actually,
Yeah.
and then it was within the last year and a half that I was only able to low bar again.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
So-
Cool. So yeah, a couple things to work on.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, guys, keep in mind, this is a work in progress for everybody. The best athletes in the world are still fixing stuff.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? So,
all the time.
what's our next one?
Do you want to check out my bench?
Yeah. Let's do.
Check
let's
out
do
my bench. So this is my first time flat benching in, I don't know, 2 months at least. So this is 275. I did 4 sets of 2. I think this is my last set.
Mm-hmm.
That's my beautiful fiance spotting me there.
Shout out. Look at his legs.
Thanks, man.
Yours are pretty good too. So what I'm seeing is you have a good setup.
Oh, thanks.
You have a good arch that's coming from the thoracic area, not not your lumbar.
Believe it or not, incline bench helped me a lot with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really showed me how to get my lats tight.
Okay.
I have
Cool.
a bad upper trap compensation, which is where a lot of my AC joint pain came from.
Okay.
And coach threw me on the incline bench, really focused on getting my lats tight, and I think
Yeah.
that's part of the.
Awesome. Now, what the only thing I'm really seeing is just as that bar, and the reason I see this is because every time I watch a video of me benching, I see it, is getting a little loose right before that bar touches your sternum, and then kind of letting it go.
Like letting it sink in.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not necessarily sinking. You can see it doesn't really sink, but it's like we relax a little bit. So we let our back relax, and you can see when you go to press, your legs turn on.
Yep.
And that's something like you see really big, strong guys that do that is because they have so much meat and so much mass.
What are you saying? I'm tiny?
You're huge. You're a 308er.
Thanks.
But bigger guys than that,
Okay.
they can just kind of use all their muscle and their mass to propel that bar. But guys that are built like us that aren't really huge, we need to keep those legs turned on the entire time. So think of it like a gas pedal in a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is another one of Casey's analogies here. When you unrack that bar, you're like 50 to 60% gas pedal, right? You're trying to maybe pass somebody on the highway.
See what
right?
they're made of.
Calling them out a little bit,
Yeah.
right? When that bar's coming down, you're putting the gas down a little bit more, probably 80%, 90%. And then by the time that bar meets your chest or your sternum, you're 100%. So you're not waiting until you press to be 100% gas pedal. It should be 100% gas pedal by the time you touch. And then it's like that bar is just hitting a trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're so tense and you have so much elastic energy stored that it just goes. If we have that timing off, if we wait until we go to press to be 100%, sometimes we miss that spot. Right?
And that should also save you from lifting your butt off the bench too, right? Because you're
yes.
driving your quads straight back the whole way through. So.
Yep. So that's the only thing I really see. I mean, that's a good solid bench, and that's why you have a strong bench. So we got a deadlift now.
Yeah. So these were from today,
Okay.
right before we came in here, actually. A little I think my dog goes behind.
I like that. I like that.
It's faster. I noticed that if I right?
Is that? I think that's a stress there. Maybe it's
Yeah, but now I'm going correctly. But you give me your
okay. It's a good starting position. I think too many people try to be too upright in deadlift, and it takes their back. But it looks you're a little tired at lockout.
Yeah, so
Um,
this was actually I was only supposed to do 4 sets of 2 today. This was actually my 5th set because on sets 3 and 4, my thumb was ripping and I taped it up and the
darn
tape.
hook grip.
Yeah.
Who does that?
I don't know. I'm cheating both ways, hook grip and sumo.
That's
Look at me, huh? I'm about to strike out.
And a belt? Come on.
I just tried that out actually. I've never deadlifted with a belt.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
But
Yeah,
until
it
recently.
looks like, and I don't, let me know. I remember months ago, it might have been a year ago at this point. I think I said something to you. I was watching you deadlift one Saturday in here, and I was like, hey man, when you go to leave the floor, shove your head back and then carry it through lockout and
Mhm.
pull it back. When that bar breaks your knees and when you start going to lockout, pull your head back. And I remember that day your lockouts were a little bit fuller,
Mhm.
and right there it looked like they were just a little bit short.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think that's just I wasn't able to keep that tension in my upper back.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had that lat tension today. Like, yeah, it just wasn't great. Normally my upper back doesn't break down like that at this
Mhm.
weight.
So what another thing that I just noticed, kind of you didn't do it on that second rep, but it was more your first rep, your head position. So right there, I know you're not ready to go yet. This is when I like to start really getting everything in line with the bar behind the bar. I mean, I know you're setting your grip. Once that grip's set, I really like to start kind of packing everything, getting the eyes up a little bit. Some lifters can do a really good job at kind of looking down out in front of them and still pulling themselves back. But I think a majority of us need to kind of get our eyes up and our head back a little bit. So that's not terrible. That's actually pretty good. But I think if you could bring your eyes up and almost work on pulling your head back into your traps when you initiate the pull, that would probably carry you through the lockout, and it might help keep your upper back in a little bit tighter position. But I mean, overall, would you say your deadlift's your best lift?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
for
the one
sure.
that you just want to do every day.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to pick stuff up.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, overall they all look really solid. I think the one that just needs a little bit extra love, and it's with me too. It's been a work in progress. Squat. But there's a lot of things that affect a squat. I'd say more things affect a squat than any of the other movements. I think there's more moving parts, and um, we talk about leverages, we talk about limb length, things like that. Um, Guys who are a little bit, long femurs, longer legs, a little bit lankier, don't have a lot of meat on our bones.
Those are my people.
I still consider. Can I be part of that? I still consider myself in
All
that
right, I'll
club.
give it to you.
Right.
Yeah, you only got a couple more pounds for you out of it though.
Well, that's why. Like, I'm 240 pounds, but I'm not built like a lot of 240
No,
pounders.
not at all.
You see, like mutants at 240 pounds.
Mhm.
So I still see myself down with you. Okay.
Oh, please don't come down to my weight class.
So, longer limbs, not as much mass, are going to have a little bit harder time with squats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's normal. You see big, broad dudes like, stumpier, shorter legs, a lot of tree trunks for legs. They can have their feet like what seems like a foot apart,
Mhm.
drop straight down,
They're perfectly up and down.
perfectly vertical in the torso, drop straight down. Trampoline hamstrings off the calf
Bunch of
muscles,
jag-offs is what they
and
are.
just go through the roof. And I'm saying this because I'm jealous. All right, I'm not bashing, but that's we don't have that in our advantage.
Nope.
So I don't know what just made me think of this. Probably because I was mad about how well they do.
Mhm.
But sumo versus conventional.
For deadlift?
Sumo cheating? Is sumo
No,
cheating?
God no.
Why? So why do people say that?
So people say it because it shortens your range of motion, but I mean, I think the majority of world record deadlifts are conventional, right?
Mhm.
If you're going to go off the range of motion argument, the biggest bench presses in the world, those guys don't even really have an arch,
Correct.
right? So they're going
Correct.
through a full range, and they're close grip.
Mhm.
Most of them are close grip.
Yep.
When you're you pretty much go for what's strong, right? The only reason I actually used to pull conventional, the only reason I pull sumo now is because in grad school I was deadlifting and I like hurt my back, and sumo was the only way I could pull without pain after like a couple months, and I just stuck with it.
Right.
That was really just it.
That
like
was
I just stuck with it. I can pull conventional pretty similar to what I can pull sumo.
Which is good. I think it's extremely important to be able to do both of them. You know what I mean?
I want to
wanna
test
be
and see what I can do. I don't totally know, but I'm pretty close. I know I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
If I could chime in there for a second.
We have an expert deadlifter.
I'm not an expert deadlifter. However, a man who shares my name, Josh Squats, as some of you may know him, who's seen in Jared's video, famously thought he really messed himself up on a first deadlift attempt. He was pulling sumo. He skipped his second, didn't even warm up, and on his third pulled conventional, and he beat the lift he was supposed to hit on sumo.
I think that's how it should be.
In the same meet. He had trained sumo all the way up to the meet, and then switched mid final pull of the day to conventional and hit it.
Well, that's ballsy, first of all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot to say, all right, whatever, we're gonna do this, and I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah.
It's something that I've always kind of had in my mind, like, hey, if something like that happens, what are you gonna do? You just gonna be like, I'm done, or are you gonna at least give it a run and see what happens?
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to, whether it's bench pressing, training close grip, training wide grip, whether it's squatting narrow stance, wide stance, whether it's deadlifting sumo stance, conventional, be able to do all of it, because the one that you don't do is going to benefit the one that you do a majority of the time anyway.
Yeah.
It's nothing but good is going to come out of it, right? You're going to learn a lot. You're going to get stronger. You're going to develop muscles that were underdeveloped. So that's what you got to be able to do. The greatest powerlifter of all time, Ed Cohn, if you go back and watch his deadlift videos, you'll see some where he's routinely pulling 800 pounds, 900 pounds in competition, some conventional, some sumo. And it's because he always trained both. He always kept them close enough that depending on how he was feeling, he would be able to do whatever he needed to do. Me personally, if I train, technically my sumo pull is a little bit better than my conventional.
Mine too.
Yeah. But if I push my sumo pull hard and push my squat hard, my squat suffers because my hips. It beats up my hips, and I have nothing there.
Beats up your quads a lot too. From the bottom of a sumo, that's quad dominant right there.
Yeah, definitely. So it's one of those things. If I decide that I want to pull sumo again in a meet, then I'm going to have to vary how I'm training it in training. Maybe I only train it the last 6 weeks going into a meet, or maybe I train it at the beginning of the meet prep and then switch to conventional. And then maybe the last 1 or 2 weeks do like dialing in. There's a couple ways, but there's only like 20 pounds difference, I think, between my conventional and sumo.
I bet you I'm pretty similar to that. Yeah. But
I think the people that if you go online, if you go on Instagram and social media, a majority of the people who are mad and say that sumo is cheating are the people who can't do it.
Yeah, and also I think the people who. Yeah, I'm not going to get into
it. Yeah.
But either way, like with a maximum effort attempt, no matter what it is, you have about, I think it's like 10 seconds that you can exert like absolute maximum effort before your body's like crapped out. So no matter what your range of motion is, like if it's a shorter or a longer like range that you have to go through, that's the amount of time that you have. So based on where you're strong and where you're confident, like you're good.
Yeah, definitely. So train your weaknesses. Train everything.
Sumo's not cheating.
Sumo is not cheating.
Tim Contos last week said, "Earn your weaknesses."
I like that. Yeah.
Needs to be on a shirt.
It probably, he's got to have a shirt.
No, he's the AD at VCU.
Yeah. Smart guy. He's been doing it for a long, long time, and he's strong. I think he used to compete. I don't know if he still competes, but earn your weaknesses. You got to train what makes you uncomfortable. There's a post today, and it was, if you're weak at doing push-ups, do more push-ups.
Do push-ups.
I've seen people bench press like 400 pounds, but can't do like 30 push-ups. If you're weak at pull-ups, do your pull-ups.
I love pull-ups.
You know, that was one of the best things that came out of quarantine.
Oh yeah.
You know, I didn't train. I don't know about you, but I didn't train for like 2.5 months, and I was, believe it or not, I was running, jogging. All right, but I was jogging like a couple miles, 1 to 2 miles, which I hadn't done since my soccer days. I was doing pull-ups, I was doing push-ups, and I was doing hill sprints.
Nice.
And like, it obviously didn't hurt me.
Yeah.
You know what
and
I mean?
You probably felt pretty good to change it up a little bit.
It felt really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was the same way. Like I had some kettlebells and some bands, and so I just did some body weight stuff,
Yeah.
band stuff, kettlebell
Yeah.
stuff. I was real jittery though. I think I'm just like a high energy person.
Well,
So
you're
I had
probably
to do
drinking
something.
coffee all day too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, a lot of good things came out of, you know, a lot of things were learned during quarantine, I think. But guys, if you have videos that you want us to break down,
Yeah,
that'll be awesome.
yeah. Send them in.
You know, they can be bodyweight stuff like Jacob's. They could be loaded movements like Jared's. Whatever you want, send them to us. You can send them through our Instagrams or the Union Fitness Instagram, and we'll get a hold of them somehow. Or if you have any questions at all, feel free to shoot away. We're always looking for ways to help however we can.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you're listening to the podcast, to check out the YouTube video if you want to see the videos that we broke down today.
Yeah.
See what we're actually talking about, so you're not
Yeah.
just listening to it.
Right. Highly recommended.
Yeah.
So, you got anything, man?
That's it, man.
Josh, you got anything? Guys, thank you for everything. Thanks for chiming in, tuning in. You know, like we said, send us over some stuff. Let us know what you want to see, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Catch you in a couple weeks.
Take care.